I am just going to tell you what we did in Beverly Hills and give you some examples of how we worked together with the Roman Catholic Diocese, Archdiocese of LA, and the Jewish community. And we were actually approached by the Jewish community to do this after 9/11. And there was a composer named Aminadav Aloni, who was an Israeli-American, who was a film composer, and he was also music director at one of the largest conservative synagogues in the country. It's called Valley Beth Shalom. It's in Sino. And he wrote a lot of music for that synagogue and other Jewish-themed music. And the head of the organization called the Jewish Music Commission of Los Angeles, after Ami died, approached me to do a big cantata that Ami had written on the book of Ecclesiastes, or as in Hebrew it's called Kohelet. So we all thought it was going to be a one-off, and the idea was to have we had an interim pastor at Beverly Hills Pres at that time, and we would have him make some comments. We would do we would find Christian music to pair with this cantata. And the Christian minister would give some commentary from the Christian perspective about the book of Ecclesiastes, and then 10 minutes. And the rabbi got 10 minutes too to talk about the Jewish perspective. And so when I did some research about settings of Ecclesiastes, I found that Norman Della Gioia, actually, this Meditations on Ecclesiastes is a string orchestra piece. It was written as a ballet, actually. He won the Pulitzer Prize for this. So we were going to have an orchestra there. We did that. And then Peter Aben, do you know? Are you an organist?
Yes.
Yeah, right. Peter had a very interesting history. He, devout Christian, Czech Roman Catholic, but his dad was half Jewish. And he's a Holocaust survivor. He spent 2 years in Buchenwald digging mass graves and rolling bodies into them as a teenager. And he had written these 2 pieces in Latin on text from Ecclesiastes. So we did those. And then we did the cantata that Ami Aloni wrote. Well, everybody was shocked because the place was packed. And there was such a reaction that we thought, why don't we do this again and see how we can manage this. So we came up with the second one, and we decided, we formed a committee and decided to do, on a year later, a program on the Psalms. And you see the program cover is still very simple and low budget. And this is the program. If you, this time we decided it's not going to be just a concert, and the rabbis and ministers are not going to just get a 10 minutes. So we decided to call it the Los Angeles Interfaith Symposium of music. And this title evolved a little bit over the years. But it started with the Monsignor who is in charge of interfaith relations for the Catholic Archdiocese, the minister from Beverly Hills Pres, one of the most important conservative rabbis in the country, probably the world, who was at that time the chief rabbi at Valley Beth Shalom, and then his associate moderated. And this panel changed a little bit over the years, but those people were always the core of it. And we invited a curator from the Getty Museum. So we had a 90-minute symposium where that started with the curator giving a PowerPoint presentation of art on throughout history that is related in some way to the Psalms. And then the clergy discussed, the moderator fed them questions. We had microphones around the sanctuary for Q&A, so people could, address them. And then we broke. This happened on Sunday afternoon. We broke for dinner. We had a catered kosher dinner, and then we had this concert. And it's a lecture concert. I would explain why we were doing pieces. Psalm 114. Joshua Jacobson did a very interesting thing. This is published by Transcontinental. He alternates verses of Psalm 114 with from Sephardic cantillation with Gregorian psalm tones. And when you see this and actually do it, you see and hear immediately the debt that Gregorian chant owes to Jewish chant. And then we just picked psalms, settings some that people wouldn't know, and tried to make it even between the Jews and the Christians, with the music, knowing that much of the Christian music the Jewish people wouldn't know, and the Christians wouldn't know any of the Jewish music. Then we included some things for the congregation to sing, and we printed it in the program or referred to it in the hymnal. That's this first of the Mizmor LaDavid, and then we had also this hymn you probably all know, "The King of Love, My Shepherd Is." So we got the congregation involved, actually singing. Then, I should say, the audience, because we went to great pains to avoid any idea that people would think that they were coming to some kind of an interfaith worship service. In my opinion, those never work. I mean, people may be all smiles at the end of them and say, but when they get home, they complain about, we couldn't do the creed, we couldn't say the creed, or we couldn't do this, we couldn't do that. It doesn't. I remember the American Choral Directors Association some years ago when the National Convention was in Oklahoma City. They got the music director from a big Presbyterian church in Northern California to do this service. And it was an interfaith service, and she offended all of the Jews immediately. And she had no idea. She got a young rabbi to help her. Well, it started with a Jewish nigun. You know what those are? They are songs of praise without text. They're fantastic, many of them. You just sing lie, 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 or I-D-D-D die, or something. And, well, she picked a Lubavitch nigun. The Lubavitch are the ultra Orthodox black hats that cause a lot of problems. They think that they're the only real Jews. They cause problems for everybody. So all of the Jewish choir directors that are they are not Lubavitch. And the first thing out of the hat, they were singing the Lubavitch nigun. People were fuming. And you could tell, who all the Jews were in the ACDA because there was steam coming out of the collar. So we didn't want to have anything like that. This was a symposium to learn how the other side did it. And we had this dinner, then we had the concert, and we added this drawing, which was drawn by a prisoner in one of the Nazi concentration camps. In Ebensee concentration camp was a satellite camp of Mauthausen. And you can see the prisoners, because a lot of prisoners in the Nazi concentration camps were not Jews. So you see the Christians praying together and the Jews praying next to them, but they're all together, and there's a man in the corner keeping watch so that they're not caught. And we thought that this, for what we were trying to do, was a powerful image, and to make people aware that they're praying together, but they're not praying together. All right, so the third year, we decided to add something else. We had an art contest, and we notified, we could not promote this in the LA public schools because this was obviously a religiously based activity. So we contacted all of the Christian schools, the Protestant schools, all of the Catholic parochial schools, all of the Jewish schools in the Los Angeles area. And everybody got on board with this except the Protestants. The Christians, the so-called Christian schools, didn't participate. But the Catholics and the Jews did, and we had the Jewish Music Commission provided monetary prizes for the kids. They were grouped in kindergarten through second grade, third through fifth, middle school, and high school. And we displayed around the church, in the courtyard, in the parish hall, every picture that was submitted. And then in the program we had the winners, and this was the winning, the third year we did the book of Genesis, the creation. And this was the winning 9th through 12th grade submission of art for the creation. And you can see the sponsorship is beginning to increase. This is no longer a thing between Beverly Hills Pres and the Jewish Music Commission. Bereshit is in the beginning. It's the first verse of Genesis 1. And Michael Isaacson figured out a thing. We had 4 male singers, each with a handbell, and we placed them in the 4 corners of the sanctuary. And they sang the Hebrew chant, but they did not sing it together. They started it. One guy would start and start singing it, and then so it was all together. I wish, in retrospect, that we'd had a lot more people doing that, because if you've ever been in a Jewish service, especially if you in a minyan, which is the daily prayers, people gather 3 times a day to pray, and they're together, but they're doing their own thing, and so you have this sort of sound of, and you'll hear individual voices one at a time or something. And I remember a cantor told me when he was a little boy, and he would go to minyan with his grandfather, and he could hear the acoustic in that particular synagogue was such that he felt like he was enveloped in this sound. He said he actually felt like he was inside God as a child, hearing this prayer. And then we had an organist at Beverly Hills that was a great improviser, and so we had him do an improvisation. I mean, that's creation. And then we did normal things that you would expect with music about creation. we managed to sneak in because Dr. Ernie Siva is a Serrano Indian elder. He's also Presbyterian. But the Indian cultures in California, I mean, they have maintained privately the ancient Indian culture. And we had already started getting in arguments in the planning committee about including other faiths besides Jews and Christians. And the Catholics and the Jews were all for it. The Presbyterians were not. And so I got Ernie on board. Well, he was happy to do it, but I told our minister that this guy was a Presbyterian, so, oh, well, fine, okay. But he explained to us the creation chants of the Serrano Indians. And the surprising thing was that the real thing is never heard by anybody but the elders. Those chants are sung in the kiva only by the elders. The women never hear it, the children never hear it until they get old enough to, you know. But they have a completely separate body of chant that usually they have a lot of references to bighorn sheep. And he sang two of these chants about the creation that are for public consumption outside of their tribe. It was very interesting. He stood there with his maraca. And then we ended with Duraflay, organ, the Vinnie Creator Spiritus, our organist. Do you know this? Have you played this piece? The variations of the last part is a very big piece. And we learned early on, because our organist, before Steve came, wanted to do this with and insert verses of the Gregorian chant in between the organ variations. And we learned that the organ variations, if you read verses, sections of the Pentecost story, the organ, a variation is exactly long enough to cover one or two verses, a thought, you know, something that can break up. And so we had it read. I added choral Alleluias to the big finale because we were going to do the chants in between, and we choreographed it. We had 3 dancers come in and dance to this music. And in fact, I had done that. We had started doing this at the church years ago. We would do it about every other year on Pentecost Sunday. And then the very ending was the finale of Elijah. And we prefaced it by playing a recording, which I'm going to do now, and then, which I think you will probably find a little funky, but well, I've got some questions about it. Just listen to this and tell me what you think. All right, why would we, what about that recording?
Some sort of historical significance, maybe, of the location, or group of people singing it, possibly.
Yeah. That recording was a a choir of inmates in Theresienstadt. This recording was made by the Nazis. They wanted this to be part of the propaganda film they made, but they recorded it live onto a wax cylinder, and the cylinder was faulty. That's why you had the, and so they couldn't use it. But in my commentary, I just said that, here are these people, and all but 2 of the people in that choir died in the gas chambers. And the 2 people who survived happened to be brothers, and both of them cantors. But here they are, they're still creating, they're still, or recreating something, even though they're facing death. It's a very powerful image of creation, we thought. It's not an image of death, it's an image of creation. So that was the 3rd year. The 4th year, I want this to do what I wanted to do. Jonathan help. Our student left thinking I was in control.
Is that what you want?
Well, I wanted to change
to
go to the next slide, but it won't. I should be able to do it that. But
there you go. Yeah.
The 3rd year. The pictures. You never know what a kid is going to do. That one I happen to love. They were very interesting concepts. And the last one, or maybe, wait a minute, went by, where in the eye of God is actually a Mercator projection of the earth. And this is a middle school kid that thinks of that. So the next year we did the prophets. And we had so many entries in the art contest that we could not display them all in the church. So we just put the winners we displayed the winners and had them in the program. This was the winning image. And we included more congregational stuff. And we did music that we sort of did an overview of the prophets. And then we combined it, we ended with 2 congregational pieces. Send Me is a great piece that it's unison. The accompaniment is just a lead sheet. Rabbi Rothblum doesn't read music, and so you have to have a pianist who can improvise it. The Cantor Beagleisen is one of the world's great basso profundists, I guess that would be the word. His voice actually gets bigger as it goes down. It's incredible. And Rabbi Rothblum wrote this for Ira. It's just da 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 da. It's sung in it's sung first in Hebrew, Here Am I, Send Me, and then in English. And so it's very easy to learn because the cantor sings it first, and then the congregation sings the next line. And when I first learned the piece, I asked the rabbi if we could do it at the church, and he was thrilled at the suggestion. And our congregation really locked onto it. And Here Am I, Lord, is a very popular hymn. And so we did both of these. And I have to say that by the time I left I retired from the church in 2013, our congregation preferred Rothblum's Hieromason to the hymn.
Mm.
Yeah, well, it's a great tune. So we did the prophets. The art was as interesting as it had been in the past, and there was just more of it. I mean, there was too much of it.
Wow.
The birth of a prophet on the top right there is fascinating to me. And more. So the next year we did angels. And by this time the art contest is getting out of hand. Because now all of the Catholic, I think there are 60 parochial schools in Los Angeles. And I don't know how many Jewish schools there are. And not as many, but LA has a very large Jewish population. And not counting the Orthodox. The Orthodox never participate in anything like this. So we had, the teachers were submitting to us everything that every kid did. And we were beginning to rethink our success with this because it was getting so big we couldn't administer it. But this was the winning thing, Protect Me. And this was the program. We did Send Me again because it was so popular. And we just did a wide variety of music that has to do in some way with angels. And by this time, the clergy who were on the committee and who were also on the panel for the symposium, they'd worked together for 3 years, and they felt comfortable with each other. And also, angels is a kind of controversial topic. What are angels? What do they do? And all this. And they were able in the symposium to. It wasn't showing so much how the Jewish and Christian faiths are alike, but they felt really comfortable by saying, well, you guys do this, but we don't agree with that. and this is what. So it added this brand new dimension to the discussion. And it made the people in the audience also feel more at ease in asking tough questions. If some Jewish guy wasn't pleased with the answer that the Presbyterian minister gave him, he was free to say, well, look, you've said this, I respect your right to believe that, but from my experience, blah, blah, blah. What do you have to say about that? And it got very, very interesting. And of course, the art presentation from the guy from the Getty was really interesting because there's all kinds of art about angels. Here's some more of the Jacob wrestling with the angel at the top. I was interested in the middle one on the left because it's about Hagar, the expulsion of Hagar and Ishmael. So the next year, we went to this topic. forgiveness and atonement. And this provided a lot of discussion too, you know. And this image of a mother comforting her child, forgive me for I have sinned, and the implication even that forgive me for I have sinned, that could be a sinner with God and placing it in the feminine. You know, it's just thought-provoking, which is what we wanted to do, and we don't, the art teachers didn't tell their students what to come up with, they just gave them the topic. And you can see the music is, and you know, if you were to do something like this, you would obviously pick your own music, or you'd work with your the Jewish clergy in your neighborhood to see what they wanted to do and what you want to do, and the music would not be the same. But it does, that's not the point. The point is that you do things that work, and you give everybody equal time and see what happens. This piece is in Latvian. It's from a cantata called Lord, Your Earth is Burning that Lucia Garutas wrote during World War II. And when the piece was premiered, there is still fighting going on. The Russians were coming in, I think. This is late 1943, and there is a recording of the premiere. And you can hear, you know, if you listen to the recording, you can hear, you know, artillery off in the background. And it provided me also in the lecture that went along with the music an opportunity to tell a story, something that had just happened to us a few years earlier. We'd been giving a concert tour in the Baltics, and my choir had probably a quarter of the members were Jewish. So when we were in Lithuania, they wanted to see, they go to the Ponar Woods, which is a place where a lot of 80,000 people were killed. And we did some other stuff just for them. But there was a lady in the choir who had grown up in the United States. She never knew her father because he was killed in the war. He was a German soldier. And I guess her mother was pregnant when her father was killed. And when she was born, her mother immigrated to the United States. After she was born, she was old enough, she had enough time in Germany to still speak English with a slight German accent. And she had decided privately, and she only told the lady that she was rooming with, that free time one afternoon, she was going to go to the cathedral in Riga. And because she had done some investigating and a little historic work, and she knew that her dad had been killed in Riga in close proximity to the cathedral. And she was just going to go there and sit quietly and sort of make peace with that. Fine. Well, her mistake was telling her roommate, because the roommate told me. And I told everybody I could find out. So when she arrived, including the Jewish members of the choir, when she arrived at the cathedral, we were already there sitting waiting for her. Mm-hmm. We didn't do anything. I mean, we just sat with her. And when she was ready to leave, we all left. But this is I give that as an example because that's the lecture part of these lecture concerts was not Julius Bach wrote the St. John blah, 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 blah. Although the inclusion of something from the St. John Passion also gave an opportunity to address the issue, which is very prevalent in musicological discussions now, about anti-Semitism in the Passions of Bach. So this gave me an opportunity to point out that the two Passions are, St. John is all about guilt, and St. Matthew is all about redemption. So in the St. John Passion, Bach he can't change the scripture. Scripture is what it is. But all of the commentary texts that he chooses for the arias and the chorales do not blame the Jews. They blame me. This is and this aria, Ach mein Sinn, this is sung, this is immediately after Peter denies Christ. This is my sin. So this fit into the general programming, but it also gave an opportunity to address the issue of perceived anti-Semitism in the Bach Passions. The one on the right looks like the guy's about to drop a large egg. Well, it'll turn out to be the next Picasso, probably. And then the image of 9/11. And the child draws this, it's a boy, for atonement and forgiveness. Sometimes kids, he's a 3rd or 4th grader, they can say very powerful things if you give them a chance. All right, now that was the last year we did the art contest, because we simply couldn't handle it anymore, which was a shame, but we were not large enough of an operation to keep it going. So this is Resources of Faith, How to Understand When Bad Things Happen. That was the topic. And we combined that, or as a musical vehicle, we used, what are these psalms? Psalm 120 through 122. Actually, they go through 134, but we didn't have time to do that. I don't think we did 130, 131. Well, maybe we did get everyone in. We just didn't do them in order. These are the songs of ascent. Have any of you been to Jerusalem? Yeah, these big steps, they're enormous things that go out into the valley, and they go right up into the wall. The wall of Jerusalem is a medieval wall. It was built by the Saracen Turks, to ward off the Crusaders. But just on the other side of these steps is the Temple Mount, and the west wall is there. And these psalms were prayers that were sung by pilgrims as they came up to the temple. There are also the steps up into the temple. There were 13 steps, or 14 steps, and there are 14 psalms. So that they also could say them on each. They could say one on each step. I didn't, until I started working with the Jewish community, I didn't understand their concept of a psalm is not our concept of a psalm. The Hebrew word for psalm is tefillah. You Hebrew scholars, what is the Hebrew word for prayer? Tefillah. So these are prayers. And so we had the idea that in when you're facing the storm, you get strength from relying on God. And these are prayers of people who are going up to worship God. And the texts of these prayers are all quite different. If you go home and read the Songs of Ascent, I mean, they deal with a variety of issues. So that was that year. And then we did this one. The Stranger in Our Midst, Love Thy Neighbor. The Presbyterian minister was terrified of this topic. This was in 2011. This was right at a time when the issue of ordination of gay clergy was coming up again in the Presbyterian General Assembly. And now, even if things pass the General Assembly, it's kicked back to all of the individual presbyteries around the country, and the majority of the presbyteries have to vote on any resolution passed by the General Assembly for it to become, part of the Book of Order. So this was an issue that kept coming back because the presbyteries kept voting it down, but each year the margin was slimmer. And it finally passed a year and a half ago, I think. Well, he was afraid that somebody would bring up this topic. And he didn't want to, this was a very nice guy, very caring man, in many ways a really good pastor. But he cultivated the knack of making whoever he was talking with think that he agreed with him on theological issues. And he saw that this could be his downfall, either way, if he was pressed. And if you've ever dealt with the Jewish community or anything, when they argue, they know how to argue. I mean, that's what a yeshiva is all about. They argue Scripture, or the fine points, the nuances of Scripture. They argue, and if they won't let. If they want an answer, they want an answer. And he was terrified of this. And the rabbis said, I don't think that's going to come up. First of all, that's not an issue with conservative or Reform Jews. They've had gay clergy for years. Nobody, and the discussion is probably going to be more on social action things, in LA, for instance, a big concern of the Roman Catholic Church is immigration, for instance. And so he agreed to do it, but he was really afraid. Well, the question that he was afraid of never came up because the discussion was, and the questions were all about social action and issues of immigration, pro and con. It was a pretty healthy discussion. Can you read that? It seems a little small, but we worked in a secular, absolutely secular piece, Bridge Over Troubled Waters, in this one. And did a famous setting of The Lady with the Lamp, the poem that's on give me your tired, your poor, your starving masses yearning to be free. And I can't see the bottom of the program, so I don't remember what we ended with, but you get the idea. Oh, let me recommend to you too, if you ever want to do the surprise people in your congregation, if you don't know this piece already, the Foundling Hospital Anthem of Handel. the Foundling Hospital was an orphanage that Handel was a big supporter of. And he gave a concert raising money for them, and the piece is a kind of patchwork of the early movements are borrowed from his funeral anthem for Queen Caroline, I think, who was noted for her working with the poor in London. So there are all of these biblical texts about blessed are they that help the poor and all of this. And then, because he knew a good tune when he heard one, it ends with Hallelujah chorus. Right, I mean, it's just lifted from, and it's about 25 minutes long, you know, and it's good choral stuff and great solo stuff. But, you know, big surprise for the audience if they don't already know the piece.
So that was post-Messiah?
Yes, right. Cool. And then we did we just went from one controversy to the next. We decided to take a long, hard look at the Song of Songs. Yeah. Because there are two, you know, as you know, I'm sure there are two schools of thought. The Orthodox Jews have the same view as most Christians, and that is it is a song about God's love for his people. The rest of Judaism and a lot of other people, when they read it, they think it borders on pornography. Okay. But it has provided a lot of texts that are set over and over for weddings and things like this. And then one of the pioneer composers in the early days of the State of Israel was Mark Loffer. And he got together with Max Brot, who was a leading German Jewish intellectual. And Brot had an issue, not with the book itself, but he thought that it had been, it's like you drop a set of papers that are not bound, and then you try to put them back together again, and you don't get everything in the right order. And he repositioned things to make a coherent narrative out of the book. And it comes out quite, I mean, there is a coherent story. It's not pretty, but it ends with the girl going back to the shepherd that she started out with too. She leaves the palace. But, and when actually it's an escape, and she's beat up at the gate. And, I mean, but when you read the book as it is in the Bible now, this attack of this woman, it doesn't make sense at the gate. I mean, because you don't get any. So we did the large part of this cantata, and then we just did a lot of other settings of music, Israeli settings of text out of the Song of Songs, American settings, especially the William Billings, English settings. I Sat Down Under His Shadow. Do you know that piece of Bairstow? So it's one of the most beautiful communion anthems you could ever hope for. Bairstow was a contemporary of Vaughan Williams. And we did the Flos Campi of Vaughan Williams it's a viola concerto with textless chorus. And we brought in a violist to do the last movement of that with us. And then, you know, other settings from the Song of Songs. And I was a little disappointed in the discussion generated in the symposium, because I was hoping for some real, you know, controversy. It never materialized. I think that they were, well, it's a very sexy book. all of the images are sexual, and people really steered clear of that. You know, they're sitting in a sanctuary in a Presbyterian church, they didn't want to get into that. And then we went back to the Psalms, and then in a little more organized way than we had the first, and then in 2014, I had retired from Beverly Hills Presbyterian Church, and the minister there had retired also, and the new minister was still getting his feet on the ground. He didn't want to do it, so it was moved to Valley Beth Shalom Synagogue, and we invited the Jews. Now they're dealing with new Presbyterian minister, and the Jews and the Catholics were really adamant about inviting the Muslims to participate as a start. And there is an imam in LA, young guy, really powerful guy. I don't mean politically powerful, I mean he just is a great personality, very articulate, and he's very much into interfaith understanding. But he has the most terrible name for anybody involved in that sort of work. His name is Jihad Turk. So his first name is Holy War. And we found a piece of music called Adinu, which is published by Earth Songs. It's edited by Andre de Quadros, who is the dean at Boston University School of Music. The text is a prayer by a 13th century Spanish Sufi clergyman. I'm going to skip down to that. Here we have it. This is the last program from 2014. There are 3 or 4 verses, and the second verse is word for word the Sanctus, Isaiah 6. Word for word. So we sort of framed the middle part of the program with the Muslim poem with the Sanctus in Arabic, and then we had the William Byrd Sanctus from the four-part Mass, and then the Kedusha of Michael Skloff, which is the Jewish version, and then a fourth one, the Deutsche Kedusha of Louis Lewandowski, which combines German text with the Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. So it gave us, I mean, we did have an opportunity to bring everybody together. And then I backed out of it for a while. I think I will be involved with this again next year, June the 25th, I think. But this is what we did, and it has been very successful. My only regret is that we were not able to organize ourselves to continue the art project. It just got, it was too popular. You know, we couldn't keep it going in our circumstance. Do you have questions?
Yes, I have several questions. Okay, you made a statement that said the interfaith service never works. Could you explain yourself? So we're in the process of all of that. I'm in Baton Rouge, where all the shooting was, but there's a lot of stuff going on right now, and all these denominations
Well,
are coming together
everybody,
to make decisions.
it's hard to make an ecumenical service work, because everybody comes, you know, and they tend to be, people can't help it. You know, you sit there and you say, well, we don't serve communion that way. Or we don't do it this way, and this, why do they do that? Well, you know, the Jews don't believe in Jesus. Why are we even talking about it? Stuff like that. The mindset of most people when they go into these things, subconsciously sometimes, is a critical, I mean, they're set to not like anything. So it makes it very, very difficult to actually come together in a worship situation, because the motions of worship even are different in different denominations, different religions. The ritual is different. Everything that has meaning for that set of people, you have to make compromises, and it doesn't work. In this situation, there was no possibility of that, because we were coming together to learn how the other people, the Catholic, in our case Presbyterian, how the Catholics and how the Jewish folks responded to these questions, or dealt with this theology. How do you see this? How do you make this part of your life? And the result was that when people left, I had people constantly come up to me and say, this was one of the greatest worship experiences I've ever had. And I'm thinking, no, it's not supposed to be worship, but that's what happened. Because they did not come into the building ready to criticize. It was set up as an environment of open discussion that we could learn from the other guy.
I know when we tried to, they did a service a number of years ago and had invited our children's choir to be a part of that. Well, submitted a number of times, no, can't use this, can't use that, can't you? I went right down the line, and it was not even open to discussion.
Right. No, and you can't do that here. We just don't do that in this church. And this format avoids all of that.